All right, I think people have had enough time. People can always jump in as we go. James, so if you're ready to go, we can crack on. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Yeah, it's a pleasure to see everyone. As we are going along and going through this, please feel free to enter some questions into the chat as we've got a Q&A afterwards. So we should fit in some time for some of your questions. But yeah, today we're going to be discussing 2023 cyber threat report through SonicWall. I've got James on board with me. So quick introductions, I think, are in order. I'm Nick Henderson. That's me on the right-hand side there before the COVID weight jumped on. I've got 5 years as an account manager in different fields, and I've been at Riven now for 2 years. Riven Associates have had 20 plus years as an IT MSP and IT partner, specializing in empowering businesses to fulfill their IT potential and also mitigate cybersecurity risk. As we're seeing in recent years, the need for dedicated IT support increases every year. And as of last year, cybercrime has actually overtaken physical crime for the first time ever since records began. We don't see this slowing up, and Riven prides ourselves on our service, but we want to take our support one step further by offering webinars and materials like this. I find it's quite a unique kind of aspect of what we're going to start trying to do as an MSP. And yeah, so keep an eye out for more of these webinars going forward, because we're going to be doing these on a regular basis. If you'd like to discuss any IT and security queries in the meantime, please reach out to either myself, James, or jump online to rivenassociates.co.uk for more information. As mentioned, I'm joined today by James. He's from SonicWall, who will no doubt introduce himself. But James has been a channel account manager for over 6 years, working in sales, including work within cyber and network security. SonicWall set the gold standard, and for that reason have been Riven's partner for over a decade. So over 25 years in the industry, fighting cyber crime and defending businesses worldwide. And as mentioned, have been a partner of ours for 10 years. So as mentioned, James will be covering the 2023 SonicWall threat report, which will focus on giving a view on the current landscape and measures that cyber criminals will go to in order to attack companies like yours. As mentioned, feel free to jot down any questions you might have. And James, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining today. As Nick mentioned, I've been at SonicWall for about 2.5 years now. Previous to that, I was at a couple of other cybersecurity organizations. So yeah, about 6 years in the industry, predominantly channel sales. So working with resellers and MSPs like Riven Associates, who obviously provide a service, a security service to the likes of you guys. Today, we're going to run through the threat report. It's a document that's published kind of on a bi-yearly basis. So all of the threats and all of the topics and stats that I'll be discussing today are all pulled from our previous cyber threat report, which looks into last year's statistics. So it gives you an overview of the landscape and what's kind of what's fresh and what cyber criminals are looking into. And I'll touch on a little bit about us as a vendor, how we can help and how we can assist you and your businesses be more secure. And yeah, Nick mentioned Q&A. Any questions you have throughout, we'll whack them in the chat, and then yeah, questions and answers towards the end. But this is really the state of play at the moment. I'll touch on kind of where we are as an industry and who we're up against initially. And we are up against the cyber criminals. A couple of years ago, their market was valued at about $5 trillion. It was estimated to get to about 10 trillion in a couple of years' time. I think it's roughly about 8.5 trillion at the moment. It makes it the third largest economy in the world, behind China and the United States of America. So that puts it into some scale for you. And these guys are all about greed, earnings, monetary gains, and causing disruption to businesses. Long gone are the times and the kind of pictures you have in your head of a cyber criminal sat in his bedroom, maybe a teenager with his hood up, trying to cause disruption to businesses, hack websites, etc. These guys are now incredibly sophisticated. If you go onto the dark web. I don't recommend it. But if you do, you'll see, these organizations set up incredibly well. They've got HR departments, job roles. If you apply for a role to be a hacker at these organizations, you'll see, multiple interview processes, etc. And they're very, very sophisticated and cause a huge amount of damage to organizations. On the flip side of that is the industry that we're in, cybersecurity. Oh, Nick, if you just go back a slide, sorry. Thank you. Is the industry we're in. So cybersecurity, roughly a $250 billion industry, growing year on year, and we're seeing more and more buzz around cyber, more buzz around security, kind of in general. And as such, kind of, you might see this yourselves, more budgets are being aligned to spend with cyber, develop the cyber protection that you have within your organization. But that comes at a cost as well, and it comes at a cost of stretched resources, overheads for you guys. You might have a small IT team with multiple solutions to manage. Last year I read something that the average enterprise organization deploys 75 different solutions to protect its network. So you got to think there's 75 different certifications, training, the day-to-day management of these devices. Your IT team is going to be stretched, or it's going to need to be huge to manage that. So that's obviously why you can lean on guys like Riven for the MSP side of things, but also, a vendor like us with SonicWall, and I'll come on to it a little bit later, can consolidate a lot of those different requirements into a single pane of glass management suite, and you're able to reduce those overheads and reduce those complexities. Next slide, please, Nick. And this is the reality. It's something that we call the cybersecurity business gap, and it builds out quite nicely. And essentially, and this may resonate with you guys, it shows the difference between what is required from a security perspective in terms of solutions that are in place, the personnel that are required, and actually what you have in-house in terms of headcount and what you're aligned per year in terms of budgets. I think that budget aspect is slowly increasing as there's more awareness on cyber. But there's still a gap, and that's very much dependent on kind of where you are as an organization in terms of your, whether it be your cloud migration, whether you're 100% remote, you've got some on-prem, you've got hybrid environments, whether you're fully SaaS, you're in a managed service, a managed office. This will very much depend kind of where you are on your journey, but the basis of it still remains as, there is a cybersecurity gap between what you require as an organization to be completely protected and actually what you have out there. Next slide, please, Nick. So that's kind of setting the scene as such, and hopefully that kind of resonates with you guys. But we'll move on now to the cybersecurity threat report released by SonicWall. And essentially, just to give you some background, this is where we pull all of the data from. So out there globally, we have millions of firewalls, millions of access points, switches, devices that are in the cloud, on endpoints. So we've got millions of sensors out there, and they're constantly pulling data back into our database, which is called our Capture Labs database. And every 6 months, some very clever people within that team digest all of that data, understand where it's come from in terms of, continent or region, but what industry it's come from, and they can pull a report which I'll run through in the later slides. But essentially, it's for you guys to understand the threat landscape, understand where it's moving, how it's developing, and hopefully that can give you some information and some guidance on, where you're going to invest in the future, and potentially where your gaps are in your network and in your security stack. Next slide, please, Nick. These are the overall trends. I'm going to dive into these in a little bit more detail, so I don't want to spend too much time on this slide. But as you can see, some areas have had huge increases, and actually, surprisingly, ransomware, for example, have had decreases. I'm not going to touch on encrypted threats over the coming slides, so I'll touch on it now. But essentially, these threats are down. Encrypted threats, if you're kind of unaware of what they are, it's all over encrypted traffic through the internet. So HTTPS encrypted traffic makes up about 80–90% of what we see at the moment. And encrypted traffic sounds like it's already protected, it's already safe. but actually cyber criminals are utilizing this to get into your network and exploit those kind of barriers. We're seeing this decrease because, from our perspective, more and more customers are turning on features like DPI SSL or TLS decryption, which means this attack surface in this type of area with encrypted traffic can be monitored, and a certificate can be pushed out afterwards to say that that's a safe passage as such. But all the other areas, as you can see, have increased, and some are quite a huge distance actually. So Nick, if we go on to the next slide, let's start with ransomware. Ransomware, as I'm sure you guys all know, is probably one of the biggest buzzwords, biggest topics in the industry. If you ever see anything kind of come online on BBC News, etc., of attacks, WH Smiths, more recently, and quite a lot of other large organizations, they're hit by ransomware attacks. This slide shows you kind of the volume of the different countries. I'll take it with a pinch of salt because we are a US based company, so that is massively anomalized slightly. But yeah, UK second highest globally in terms of ransomware volumes, in terms of threats that we've seen. That's potentially down to the economic changes that we've seen recently, the Brexit, political changes, regulation changes, but you've also got to understand and see what organizations are in the UK. You've got large data centers, you've got our NHS trust organizations, massive multinationals. You think of the finance organizations in the City of London. Those combined just give you huge amounts of personal data for the hackers and for the organized crimes units to go after. So for us as a nation, we're very much a target in that sense. Going back to the previous slide, there was a 21% drop in global ransomware. You can stay on the slide, Nick. It's okay. The previous one. A drop sounds, like it's actually improving and the state of play is improving. In terms of volumes, yes, you're right, it is, but it's all about perspective. So these stats are pulled from 2021, but 2022. But the previous year in 2021, that was a record-breaking year for ransomware. 2022 is still the second highest year in terms of volume for ransomware. So it's still very much prominent, and it's still incredibly detrimental to your businesses if you get attacked that way. It's still the same. It's actually higher than the 2019 and 2020 volumes combined. So that gives you some perspective of how this is ramping up massively over the past couple of years. Reasons for the decrease, I'll go into it in the next couple of slides when I talk about kind of the generic malware terms. But we've seen over the past 12 months, lots of high-end attacker groups get breached by FBI agencies and police departments across the world. They've had their assets seized, their crypto wallets seized, and ransomware is obviously a hot topic, and it's quite a long-term piece of attack malware to develop. So it takes a long time. It's very targeted. It's very, very clever in terms of how it detonates and how it works. So from that perspective, we're seeing more and more in terms of moving back to the more traditional side of malware. So your links, your attachments, your phishing, that kind of style. So I'll cover that in a little bit more in the next few slides. But ransomware as such, it's decreased, but yeah, at the same time, it's still very prominent. This is pulled from a report that we had. We give on an annual basis to a selection of IT managers across our end users. I think it's about 10,000 IT managers we send this out to. And these are the results in terms of what they're most concerned about moving forwards. As you can see, ransomware is still top of mind. I think that's purely down to the fact that it's probably the most known attack surface. And that's why it's always going to be at the top. Phishing and spear phishing, you might be able to kind of combine that into ransomware in terms of the type of attack. But if you remember back to the first slide that we spoke about on the threat report, the likes of cryptojacking, the likes of IT malware were massive increases year on year, and those attack surfaces are increasing massively. But based on where IT managers are putting their time and effort, based on these results on this slide, they're relatively low down the stack. So from this session, what I want you guys to kind of understand and take away potentially is, it's not just ransomware. There are lots of other attack surfaces out there, and you need to be really covered from a complete end-to-end perspective in that sense. Next slide, please, Nick. RTDMI. So I'll touch on this briefly. So real-time deep memory inspection is what it stands for. And essentially, it is exactly what it says. It's a deep memory inspection of codes, of files, of attachments to understand if there is any code there that's malicious. So, our advanced threat protection solutions, such as sandboxing, intrusion prevention, could go on and on in terms of the features that we have on our solutions. They all work incredibly well, but hackers and hacker groups and code writers are becoming increasingly, cleverer in terms of how they write their code, and they're writing code now to avoid those types of detection services, like intrusion prevention attempts, like all of those other features. So you need to have something in your stack in terms of protection that is going to look deep in memory to understand if there's any code there that's avoiding those types of technologies. Real-time deep memory inspection does exactly that, and it's totally patented to SonicWall in that sense. So, it's a real deep inspection of the file, of the code, to understand if anything there is malicious. To give it some perspective, as you can see, we released it in 2019. It's grown year on year. It's constantly learning. The more it finds, the more it understands, the more it can detect and protect your businesses. And that equates last year to about 1,200 never before seen unknown pieces of malware per day that is catching. And that's almost 500,000 in total throughout the year. Now, the clever bit about this technology is, I spoke about our Capture Labs database earlier. All of this net new unknown pieces of malware that RTDMI is finding and capturing is not only protecting that specific organization, but it's then feeding it back into our database. And the nice thing is, when you buy a SonicWall, is you have access to that database. So within 24 hours of a brand new, totally unknown piece of malware being found, every organization and every user of SonicWall globally will have that signature match against. So what you're buying into is not a static piece of technology. It's something that, is ever evolving and ever changing and ever protecting your business. Next slide, please, Nick. Thank you. So malware, I touched on this earlier in terms of how it differentiates from ransomware. So this is kind of the more, I suppose, basic forms of malware, basic forms of attacks like phishing. You might have malicious links that lead you to malicious websites. You might have attachments that have malicious code in. And essentially what they're doing, and what we think attackers are doing, are diversifying away from ransomware, and they're moving towards spray and pray. So ransomware, as I mentioned earlier, is very difficult and time consuming to create, whereas a phishing email can be created, and you can put loads and loads of email addresses, huge databases of email addresses on, and just send it out. It's incredibly quick and easy to send, and the results can come back very, very quickly in terms of hits, people who have clicked on links, opened attachments, etc. So that's where we're seeing malware go. It's up 2%. It doesn't sound like a lot, but actually, in terms of quantities, it's actually quite a lot. And it's throughout the year, it's very much static in terms of the amounts of volumes. So that links back again to how the hacking organizations and how these cyber criminals are pushing these out. It's very linear in terms of who they're targeting, how they're targeting them. So again, linking back to kind of advice for you guys, just make sure everything is all locked down. All of your security features are turned on for all of your devices. You've got coverage. You understand your weak points, and you're in the process of really finding those and changing that. Cryptojacking. So if you haven't heard of cryptojacking before, I think it's a really interesting piece. It's essentially where a hacker will hack into your network and take over the computing power of some of your machines to mine cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. It's very low risk for the hacker, and it usually goes unnoticed. You'll see see your network slow down. It might bottleneck because obviously this additional computing power is being utilized by the hacker. But it's very popular for organizations to do purely because crypto is totally anonymous and untraceable. So these guys are able to thrive and grow as an organization because they're easily able to move that money around totally unnoticed on the dark web. They're able to purchase things and grow as a company in that sense. This relates somewhat to crypto prices. So last year, I think there was a big spike in the stock price of Bitcoin, etc. So it's quite interesting that it kind of follows that. But it helps hackers navigate around sanctions. It helps them move money, and yeah, like I said, thrive as an organization. And now I think this is our last slide for the cyber threat report side of things. So IoT stands for Internet of Things. So really anything that's connected up to the internet, which in these days is quite a lot of things. You think of your office, you might have, all of your office kitchen appliances, smart fridges, smart freezers, smart kettles, toasters, CCTV cameras, you name it. These days, there's probably some link back to the internet or some connectivity there. Essentially, we're seeing a massive increase in this purely because, most things these days hook up to the internet or have app control. So bringing them into the network and onto the network into your working environment, into the offices, is becoming more and more normal. A couple of examples that I can think of. I saw a video a couple of years ago of someone sitting in a Tesla car. I think they plugged something into the OBD reader, and within 20 minutes they had hacked the system, which meant they had hacked, into your Tesla account, had got your credit card details, and before you know it, had pretty much everything, and they were able to control the car. I think Tesla has kind of rectified that now and added some additional layers of protection, so that doesn't happen again. But that's a good example of where technology is there, and it's great for us day to day, but actually in terms of protection and security, there's not a lot there. Another one I can think of is in a Las Vegas casino. It's quite a famous one. I think it's from about 2017. But they have these huge fish tanks in their lobbies, massive, huge fish tanks, and they're all controlled by smart filters, smart temperature controls, etc. A hacking organization was able to hack into the entire casino network, which included customer data, customer account numbers, employee details, payroll, etc., all through the fish tank, purely because their organization was working on a totally flat network. Nothing had been segmented in between business critical, kind of your edge critical infrastructure. So nothing had been separated. Once you're in, you're in. And as you can tell, there's not a lot of protection on a fish tank temperature control. So I think moving forwards, there's going to be more and more pressure on IoT vendors to implement, stronger controls, basic hardening of the devices, some kind of encryption or security. As you're aware that everything is plug and play, all of a sudden connected to the internet, you're good to go. So it makes it very difficult for IT teams and IT managers to have any visibility of this and to really understand the threats. So it needs some kind of regulation, education, visibility, kind of moving forwards. So I think that is where the kind of IoT industry is going to go over the next couple of years. And that is that for the cyber threat report side of things. It's about a 65 page document, very thorough, very in-depth. It's out now. If you'd like to understand in a little bit more detail everything that happened in the threat landscape throughout 2022, we'll follow up with an email after this session, just to say thank you for attending, and if you've got any kind of further questions, and we'll include the link. But if you'd like it now, it's just sonicwall.com/threat report, and you're able to download it there. So we'll move into the next section. So obviously they're the threats that are out in the wild and out in the threat landscape at the moment. But how can you as an organization help protect yourselves and help yourselves by adding different layers of security onto your network? So next slide, please, Nick. So thinking about kind of where you are as an organization and what you require as such. Some people at SonicWall call these our 3 pillars. I think they tie quite nicely into what you guys as end users require from a solution. From a technology, from a management, and from a cost perspective, these are the 3 things that we cover and you guys obviously require to make a business decision and to implement a new bit of tech. So as I mentioned, it's all around the technology and the security that's available. It's knowing the unknown threats and the 0-day threats. That refers to our Capture ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, and Real-Time Deep Memory Inspection, RTDMI, which I ran through earlier. And I'm going to run through in a little bit more detail from a technical perspective in a few more slides. You then need the visibility and control to accurately manage the device. This links back into integrations, into other solutions, pulling reports, analytics, ease of management with a single pane of glass, single console, single cloud console dashboard. And then linking back into costs, the economics of things. It's great to have all these devices available to you and all this security and ease of management, but if you're going to pay above and beyond for it, that's going to impact your budgets. And there's a huge amount to cover these days in terms of security, networks, even linking into IT equipment and office equipment. So from us as a vendor, we have a low total cost of ownership. So when you look at the performance you're receiving against the price that you're paying, we're actually streaks ahead of the competition from that stance. So all of that is nicely tied in to what we offer. Next slide, please, Nick. So this slide builds out quite nicely. So this relates to kind of the process, I suppose, of a malicious attempt coming into your network. So let's take an email, for example, with a link that's got potentially some malicious code in there. Initially, it will run through our Capture Labs database of known information. It's got trillions and trillions of lines of known code in there. If we see a match, we will block against it. It's signature based. It's very straightforward and very simple. And that equates to 99% of what we see in terms of blockages and threats in 2022. Now, this side of things is very simple and very straightforward. And, it's if you've got, solutions like, PFSense or Draytech devices, this is the side of things that, those types of devices will cover. They're known as stateful devices. You download an update with the latest threat data in there, and they match against it, nice and straightforward, nice and easy. But what happens if a hacker created a piece of malware after you've downloaded that latest update? How are they going to know that that is a malicious piece of code if it's not in your database and you can't match against it? So that's where someone like SonicWall with our next generation technology and security come into play. It equates to 1% of what we see and what we block, but that 1% is still millions and millions of attempts throughout the year, and it only takes one attempt to get through to cause detrimental effects to your business. So as I mentioned before, we utilize a multi-engine sandbox called Capture ATP. Essentially, that's 3 levels of sandboxing. Most vendors will utilize 1 level of sandboxing. Essentially, we're just looking at the file, at the code from 3 different angles to really understand it and get into the nitty-gritty of it. And then running in tandem to that is real-time deep memory inspection, looking in memory at the file, at the code, to understand if there's anything there that's avoiding those sandboxing technologies and advanced threat protection technologies. All of this that you can see here is running in tandem. So, we don't do one thing and then the other. Everything happens all in one go. If we find something that's malicious, we'll block until verdict, so it won't be released onto your network until we come to a decision. If we decide that it is malicious, we'll feed it back into our database of Capture Labs. And what's nice about SonicWall is you're not buying into something that's static, you're buying into something that's ever evolving. So if you've got a SonicWall and it's licensed, you will have access to everything you see here. And what's nice is it's constantly updating and constantly evolving. So if in Australia, there's a piece of 0-day unknown malware that's just been detected, not only will that organization be protected and blocked against it, but within 24 hours, every single SonicWall device globally will have that signature matched against in our capture labs, and that will be updated automatically. So from that perspective, you're buying into something that's ever changing, and it's a longer term investment over the initial investment. If it's good, we obviously deliver it to the network, and you can see all of this from a management perspective, linking back into visibility and control through our capture security center, which is our single pane of glass for anything management, reporting, any policy changes, etc. you may need to make. Nick, if you go on a few slides, please. Perfect. So don't take my word for it. That's obviously from my perspective. I work at SonicWall, so I'm going to say it's very good. This is a totally independent test that we received from the ITSA labs. They essentially test vendors' statistics, vendors' claims to see if they're true. So they took one of our firewalls, a mid-range firewall with all of the security services turned on. They took it for 1 quarter. They threw loads and loads of tests at it, new malware, totally unknown malware, obviously little known malware and known, because you need to see that false positives and understand that side of things. In that quarter, we had 100% detection of unknown threats and 0 false positives. They've still got that firewall 8 quarters later, so 2 years later. And in that time, we have still got 100% detection rate, and we've got 1 false positives, which I hope you guys can forgive us for. But essentially what that shows is the detection is unparalleled. No other vendor has received 100% threat detection on 1 quarter, let alone 8 quarters. So from that perspective, the security you're buying into as SonicWall is really top notch. And then from a management perspective, those false positives, you're not having to go in and release emails or release documents, etc. Based on those false positives. It's very accurate and very easy to manage. So that combined kind of gives you a view of the threats and the technology side of things when you look at SonicWall. And this links into our portfolio. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, because this is more of an education piece for you guys to understand the threat landscape and a little bit about SonicWall rather than a product pitch. But essentially, whatever area of security, whatever network, whether that's cloud-based, on-premise, whatever you need to protect, we've got a solution for. So we've got firewalls ranging from 5-10 users all the way through to your large data centers, your huge enterprise organizations and large universities. Got virtual firewalls which cover that cloud space, whether it's public or cloud, public or private cloud. Switching and access points, again, they've got that layer of security on there in case you need that additional layer onto those devices. Email security, capture client, which is our endpoint piece. That's built on the SentinelOne next generation AV engine, and it's got all of our SonicWall security wrapped in as well. We've come up against SentinelOne as a standalone, and we've done tests against them. We've got a better catch rate and a better protection rate in terms of that. And then also cloud application security down the bottom right. That's an API integration into SaaS apps like Office 365, G Suite. It also covers applications like Dropbox for file sharing, etc. And yeah, it provides an additional layer, an additional scan in addition to the native scan that you'll receive from Microsoft, Google, etc. So hopefully from that, you can understand whatever your requirement, whatever your stage of cloud migration, hybrid environments, if you're on-prem, we've got something for you. And everything here can be managed through a single pane of glass management suite. So you can add different products into a single pane of glass, same UI, same feel, same look, really intuitive to use. So it comes back to that consolidation piece that we can offer you guys as well. I'll touch on this in the previous slide. Single pane of glass essentially just pulls all of your devices into one easy to manage, easy to understand and work with on a day-to-day basis management platform. We have an additional feature which can be added onto our firewalls called Network Security Manager. Essentially, this provides you the ability to pull reports and understand your kind of analytics of your network in a little bit more detail. Very, very granular. You have the ability to zero touch your devices. So for instance, if you're an organization with 10 sites across the UK, and you're updating your network and all of your firewalls, you can pre-configure them on Network Security Manager Cloud Console. Once they're delivered to site, someone non-IT can plug them in, give them internet connectivity, and you're in and you're running and you're ready to go. And all of the management can be done through NSM right from where you're sitting, all for all 10 sites. Very, very good tool and a nice add-on to all of our firewalls. So if you're a multi-site organization, or you need some extra reporting, analytics, or for compliance purposes, you need some compliance reports being pulled, this is a nice tool to add onto SonicWall devices. And then linking that back to the kind of ease and the onboarding process, of the previous slide, making your lives easier. So I think gone are the days of IT managers going into an office, sitting down next to a firewall, configuring for days and days, loads of lines of code, that's being configured for that specific instance. You can actually do this all from your mobile phone now. We've got an app that you can get in the App Store or Google Play, link it back to your firewall, and you can see the traffic, throughput levels, how it's performing, if anything's been blocked. Really, really good, nice piece here that you can obviously work on the go. You don't have to be tethered to your desk to be an IT manager anymore, which is crazy to say. And this links back into kind of us as an organization. I wanted to put this last because I think having it first and bragging about who we are and how long we've been in business for is something that you should say for later. But we've been going for 30 years. We've got a huge footprint in SMB. We're slowly getting into the mid-market and the kind of SME types of organization. But SMB, those small to medium-sized businesses up to about 150, 200 users is our sweet spot. 1 in 4 firewalls in SMB organizations in the UK is a SonicWall. 28% of SMB firewalls globally is a SonicWall. So we've got a huge footprint there, and all for a really good reason, as I've hopefully explained well over the past few slides. As I mentioned on that portfolio aspect, not only do we have the security, but then that underpins all of our different devices. So regardless of where you are, what stage of your migration or what area you need to touch on and cover, we've got a product for you to assist. And we work with so many different channel partners across the world. Riven Associates being one of our really, really good ones in the UK. They're a gold partner of ours, top level partner. Really like working with the guys, and they've got their managed service offering down to a T. So if you need any more information on that, obviously get in touch with the Riven guys, or equally just reach out to myself, and I'm happy to kind of run you through anything from a SonicWall perspective and how it links into what Riven are able to do. And then just to finalize, we're really bridging the gap between, conventional cybersecurity and kind of what we see as next generation boundless cybersecurity. I think I'll take a punt and say everyone here on the call has some kind of remote working aspect, some kind of hybrid working aspect. So ensuring that you're protected regardless of where that employee resides is very, very important. And then linking back into the cyber threat report, hopefully that gave you guys an idea of where the threat landscape is at the moment, and how hackers are diversifying away from that kind of ransomware side of things into just every single kind of malicious activity that they can think of. They're really attacking every kind of aspect. So just make sure that everything that you have is fully patched. Every security service that you're able to turn on is turned on. It's there for a reason, and just make sure you're fully protected. If you've got any questions, obviously get in touch with Nick and myself. But I will hand back to Nick now, who will close the webinar. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thank you very much. Really insightful as always. No matter how many times I see that deck and the cyber threat report, something always stands out, or I learn something new. So thank you very much. I've actually had no questions come through, so I'm hoping that's because you were so detailed and explained everything. Oh, we've got one actually coming through actually. So let me just read that out for you. Which services and providers do you think SonicWall should replace? Sophos, Mimecast, or is it an additional layer of security, i.e. a new cost or a replacement and improvement of existing services? And that was from Tim.
Thanks, Tim. So we come up against, we're not, let's say, a niche vendor in the cybersecurity world. We do have competitors, quite a lot of competitors actually. So we do come up against the likes of Sophos. I'd say in terms of our main competitors, you've got Sophos, WatchGuard, Fortinet, and then moving into kind of the enterprise space, your more Palo Alto and Checkpoint business, which we do come up against quite a lot actually. So for me, it's a alternative. It's a potential replacement, and understanding the benefits that you're getting from your current provider, whether that be Sophos or Mimecast that you've got up there, or whether SonicWall can add different areas. If you're struggling with your management, or if you're not able to turn your features on, or if you need kind of different kind of services, or a different way of working that your current provider isn't giving you, please do reach out and have a look. It can be an additional layer, but again, it depends on what type of environment and what type of network you have at the moment. But predominantly, it's a replace of existing, or if you've got a new site, it'll be a brand new piece of kit in there as well.
Lovely. Thanks for that, James. Yeah, I mean, this is being recorded and putting up on our website, and we're also going to send out an email thanking everyone for attending. So I'll give it a couple more minutes, obviously, if any more questions come in. But if you do think of anything, then just reach out to us. Our contact details are there on the slide. You can always check out our websites. But yeah, as mentioned, we're going to be sending out an email. So any questions, just send us a response and we'll get back to you. But yeah, lots of details on our websites as well. This is going to be the first of webinars that we're putting together as Riven Associates. So look out for more materials coming out as well. But yeah, unless anyone does have any more questions, I'll give it another minute or so. Thank you all so much for attending. Check us out online. And yeah, there's going to be plenty more to come. Anything else to add, James? Any facts? No. Sign us off with a fun fact.
I'm out
just
of
to put you on the spot.
I'm out of statistics. I've got nothing left. No, just thank you guys for attending. I hope that was informative. If you've got any questions, that you think of afterwards, give myself an email, or just give me a call. Happy to have a chat and kind of run you through anything. So yeah, thanks for attending, and the guys at Riven will follow up with you guys soon.
Before you zoom off, James, we do have someone typing, so there could be something coming in. So bear with me one sec before you move on to your next chat or your next meeting, if you've got a sec.
Yeah, no problem.
You thank yous coming in.
Oh, that's what we want to hear. Yeah. Brilliant.
Lovely.
Great. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Ali. Cheers, everyone. Have a good day. And as mentioned, any questions, just reach out to us. James, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.